Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. In this episode, I'm joined by Jamie Briesemeister, CEO and co-founder of Integration Controls in St. Louis, Missouri. She's a Residential Tech Today contributing writer, a CEDIA board member, and one of my favorite people in the industry. I'm so happy to have you on the podcast finally, Jamie. Happy New Year, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you. It's so good to be here. Happy New Year to you, Jeremy.
Thank you. Great to see you. And yeah, we've both been busy, I think, and you and I collaborate on articles, but we've had a little break for a while. So I wanted to catch up and talk about some of your stories that you've written for us, because I think that they really tell a lot about who you are and your take on the industry, obviously. But I also just wanted to really showcase your background and your unique career path to get to the residential tech industry.
Thank you. Yeah.
So one of the things that I obviously find, really intriguing about who you are in this industry is that A, you're a woman in a male-dominated industry, a co-owner of a company, and B, your background is in speech pathology, which is not a speech language pathology, which is not exactly your typical path to get to home tech. So
no.
you covered that in one of your early articles. And I really thought that was such a cool article. It was one of my favorites that you've done. You talked about you wrote about how you worked with children with language delays and disorders, and that kind of helped you talk to clients and help them find words for things they didn't really understand or know how to explain as far as what they wanted in their home. What was that career path? Like, how did you make that transition? I know that your husband, Jeff, had more of a technical background, more traditional pathway. Yeah. But how was it that you came to change careers and join Jeff as co-owner of the business?
It was, we were both working at the time in a different field. He wasn't an integrator at the time that we decided to start Integration Controls in 2004. And I had been a speech pathologist for 3 years, working solidly in the field in a nonprofit organization, putting in some pretty grueling hours. And if anyone's ever worked nonprofit, sometimes the payoff isn't always worth the time that you put in, but it's for the heart,
Right.
But I kind of burned myself out, honestly. I was so passionate, straight out of college, ready to be my best. And I kind of saw a lot of things and fizzled out a little too quickly that, made me take pause right around the time that my husband was feeling a similar way with his work. And he had been in the integration world and in automation before and said, let's start this company, and would you want to join me? I thought I would kind of be part-time for a little while, kind of helping him build maybe some marketing materials, giving a female perspective to the organization. As you may have seen, you've seen a lot of tech companies over the years. There's different ways of approach. Some can be like really super techy and kind of geek out on it, and some can be a little more design centric, and that's really what we wanted to be. So and then, as the time kind of went on, I actually felt I struggled keeping up with my CEUs to be a speech pathologist. And I felt like I was, and the more I dove into integration controls, the less interested I was in having 2 jobs. And so it was interesting at one CEDIA where I was, full-time as an integrator at that point. But one CEDIA Expo I went to, I had really struggled with maintaining my licensure as a speech pathologist. There's a lot that goes into that for anybody who's ever gone there. It's a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, a 9-month apprenticeship program, a very intense praxis exam. And, when you give it up, you have to redo a lot of that stuff potentially. So I was trying to keep my CEUs to maintain that. And I met someone who also was a woman in a Kaleidoscape booth at a CEDIA Expo. And she said, she was a teacher. I think she was working there as kind of a side job for the Expo as a relatively moderate booth babe. Not like the booth babes of 1990s, okay?
Yeah.
But she said something which I just found so interesting. She said, well, you know, I'm a teacher, and if this is your career path, to thine own self be true.
Hmm.
And you know, it's funny, sometimes you get permission from strangers or even close or maybe not so close acquaintances that really give you that kind of, okay, I don't have to keep doing this just
Yeah.
because I committed to it at one point in time. And it kind of was a freedom to say, okay, I'm officially walking away from that. How I dove into learning about what integration is and home technology in general was really through CEDIA and taking as many courses as I could at every expo along the way, and getting my hands dirty out in the field and pulling wire. You know,
Okay.
I'm not one to just sell something because I know that I can, or go out there and promote something in an empty way. And I felt like I really needed the background knowledge. So I was an installer for a little while, probably not the best one, but my husband and our employees at the time were really patient with showing me what needed to be done. And through the CEDIA courses, I had learned a whole lot, and really just kind of being out there for 16 years, I feel has given me some of my technical chops, but there's always, always, always room for growth. So,
Well, I mean, I think that one of the things that you have that others that are more traditional pathways to this industry may not have is that you're not so mired in this idea of what it has to be because of you've always done tech, you've
yeah.
always been a part of it, you know all the answers and you don't listen. I'm saying that they would be like that. They may not listen as well to the client because they think they know the answers to everything, and you are probably still feeling like you're figuring it out as you go, and open and receptive to more interaction. Plus, you're so involved in the industry in other ways, and um, CEDIA involvement. So
Right.
it seems like, are you able to engage differently with a client than maybe even other folks in your company would be able to,
I
do you
think
think?
so. Yeah. I mean, we had a couple of conversations recently where, you know, I listen to our clients just like they're educating me because they are. And one in particular has had a couple of uh, very clear communication pathways. And I think even in that article that I wrote for one of yours, like she taught me a lot about making sure that you're very crystal clear on certain things. And
Hmm.
it's just it's communication. You know,
Yeah,
one of
I remember that you had said
yeah,
something in the article about how a question about, or you said something about they don't like music, but they,
right, yeah.
what was that?
Yeah, so
Remind me
her
what that was.
husband was saying, you know, we were talking about music and whether or not to put speakers in a room. And she kept saying that she liked it quiet. And so her husband's like, oh no, we don't need him then. And then she looked at him like, I said I liked it quiet, not silent.
Right.
And that semantic is just really important. And so as a speech pathologist, we very clued into language, and language has impact, and there's various forms of language, and nonverbal, and you know, actual verbal, and the tone of your voice and the hand gestures that you use, all of that. And when you're working with children who have some speech or language impairment, it's an emotional thing for the family. And oftentimes the children I worked with were very involved medically, very complicated situations, interesting family dynamics. And you have to integrate a lot of the communication pathways and kind of a program and a solution for that client, and then move it forward and enact it and progress along the way until hopefully you reach a goal. And in a similar way with, you know, talking to clients about their home technology, they don't have the words for it.
Right.
They just know they want it to work and work simply. Why isn't it work? Something about it is broken. And that's our job to kind of go in and investigate and figure out and ask the right questions, you know, based on their lifestyle. You know, I would ask, when we think about speech pathology, you know, it's not about saying the right S's and P's all the time. Really, it's the fundamental language that kind of builds who you are, the words you use, whether you attach additions to them, how you structure it. And similar in technology, it's very, it can be broken down into all of these little pieces. Ultimately, the output is whatever the experience the client has. So as integrators, using that same concept, we have to go into this environment, and instead of integrating communication pathways, we integrate technology, but we have to know what the client wants. And digging that out, the client can tell you they want a TV on a wall all day long, but they're not going to tell you all the other hundreds of things you need to know, right?
Right.
Exactly where you want it, the type of television that they want, surround sound, what type of speakers, the amplification, maybe they don't want surround. Like, they're not gonna, you have to uncover that. So I think that drawing on those skill sets, it's a people thing. It's a communication. And if you can learn the skill sets, there are many opportunities for people outside of tech to come into it. And I think it does offer a fresh perspective. I'm not too egotistical to say I've known it this way and it's always been done, so I'm right.
Yeah.
And in a lot of the meetings that I have with many different people in my company, on other boards and CEDIA, I think sometimes having that outside perspective, it definitely helps. Like, there's many ways to address a problem. And it's important to have different communication pathways. Conversely, certain clients and I don't really gel and get along. So I'm glad I have some extra staff on my team to kind of say, okay, I'm not going to gel with that client, but you can. So you run with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things you wrote about, and I definitely am going to cover a lot of your articles just because I think you've covered so many great topics and they're worth revisiting. And I don't want Matt on Resi Week to have all the honor of talking to you about your articles, which I've one of my best. We've both been guests on Resi Week.
Yeah.
And I one of my favorite things is when I'm out for a walk and I'm catching up on that podcast and you're a guest and you talk about one of the articles you've written for me, and it's like, yes, that's like
cool.
hitting everything,
Yeah.
But one of the topics that you mentioned that resonated as well with your prior career, I think, was a little bit about this audible garbage. I think is how you use the terminology.
Acoustic garbage.
Acoustic
or
garbage. Yeah. And what I liked about that was you were talking about your sensitivities, and I have similar sensitivities, and I deal with tech as a editor and writer, and I get a lot of opportunity to try out technology. And recently I had something in my house that had horrible fan noise, and it was like, this is not what I signed up for. It's made my life worse. I know it's maybe protecting the network, but it's not supposed to be in my family room, and they didn't tell me this ahead of time. So I remember you writing about how, things like motor noise from a lift, maybe for a TV or something, is not what someone is going to want. And you have that sensitivity to understand, hey, this has to all work in a way. Some people may not feel that way. They just like the gadget and don't care that it makes noise when it lifts. But I think that was an interesting perspective as well. Just that you have a sensitive side that allows you to say, can we do this better? Or maybe we need to explain to the client, you can do this, but it may have this side effect.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, like, when we look at value engineering jobs, like, that's a great way. There are brands out there, you put them side by side, one is going to be cheaper, and I bet 9 times out of 10 is louder. Okay. So there's, I could be wrong. I'd like to be involved in that case study, as you get products that you get to try, then we can try it out. But 9 times out of 10, if it's less expensive, I think that there were value decisions made in the engineering of it, and probably less choices and options. And you need to know yourself as an integrator too. What market do you cater to, right? Like, most of our clients, the details matter. Most of our clients would be absolutely completely frustrated if they spent $100,000 on drapes and shades and didn't know that it would make a noise in their big, open, hard surfaced home, right? So to just kind of, you paint the picture of the cool technology and the value that it brings, but like, the reality is, if you choose a product that's noisy to get the job, then you're not painting this beautiful image. You painted the image, but you didn't deliver it, right? You delivered the visuals, but not the auditory sense. And I think that as technology people, a lot of us, like hi-fi guys, right? And a lot of people in the tech world are really tuned into certain parts. You get the video guys that need to have all of the great, and I say guys mostly because, video people that focus on video. Acoustics, more maybe on acoustics. I had a weird experience with a salesperson at one point in time that was a terrible way to sell, in my opinion. He goes, "What's more important to you, audio or video?" It's like, ugh. But on some level, you know, he was valid. Each person has a sensitivity to something, and I think it's important for us to uncover that, you know, and uh, certainly deliver on that. I would hate to invest in anything and have a loud fan in my family room. That would bug the hell out of me. You know,
Yeah.
and it's something so small, but you know, a lot of times these are big dollars people are spending.
Mhm.
So the small things really matter.
So as a company that's 16 years old, obviously you've evolved since the beginning. Those early projects are a lot different probably than the types of
Yeah,
projects you do now.
right.
Are you the typical where you're really only working on higher budget style of projects? How could you describe
Yeah,
the style of the projects that you do? Maybe
yeah,
are you
sure.
doing dedicated home theaters anymore, or just doing whole house control? What would
Right.
you say about your types of projects and budget level?
Well, I think, you know, you asked a question earlier if maybe I had a different perspective, like coming out of the industry and being a woman. So I don't know if either of those are true, but the way that we are going about projects these days, it's a little bit less, it's less than the technology, and it's more about the approach and the client and the relationship. So we've developed what I call our columns of clients, and they're three. And internally, we call them simple tech, attainable automation, and luxury living.
Okay.
So internally, when we're meeting with a client, if they're a simple tech client, they're going to use IoT devices most likely. They saw it at Best Buy, but they want somebody that will service them, install it correctly. They don't have the time for it, and they just want it done right. So that's our client because we provide everything they're looking for on the service side. You know, attainable automation is more my control four clients that maybe want one or two or three rooms, but they don't want to go whole hog, or it's their first or second home, but maybe not their final home. And then the design mindset fits with certain core products and budgets. And similarly on the luxury side, higher end projects, dream homes, bigger houses, but all of the clients want a good provider who's reliable and answers the phone call when something breaks and provides that service and support when they need it and is there for the long haul. So when I see a prospect, if it's the right one, we can meet them when they're a simple tech, fresh out of college, or maybe their first home. We can grow them into their second or third home and be there when they design and you know live their dream home. And then even maybe go back down the chain as they downscale and their family moves and they need to be a little bit more simple later in life. So we do all scales of projects, but really it's focusing on the right type of client base that understands that we're in it for the long haul. We're not going to be a quick sell. We're probably not going to deliver a proposal the fastest because we care when we put something out there that it's going to be the right price, it'll work, it'll do what you want it to do. And so that's been the approach that we've taken over time. It's certainly been something that's developed and will always be in development though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how big of a company are you now as far as employees, number of employees?
We have 11.
Okay.
And if anyone is watching this and you're a lead tech, like give me a resume. So we're hiring for a lead technician, but yeah.
Okay. And do you have a showroom there in St. Louis?
It's a working showroom, but yeah, we have a building. When Jeff and I first started our company, we always wanted a house that was in a commercial environment.
Hmm.
And we found it in 2012. We bought small-ish, moderate size house. It's on a corner street in a commercial environment. So you walk in, it feels like your home.
Hmm.
Everything is kind of built in and embedded. So it's a working environment that we work out of, but it's also conceptually almost everything that we would do. And then those things that we can't show, our clients are fantastic. They let us come into their homes. But now that COVID's around, digital is really where we're moving next, capturing video on all of these locations and
Hmm.
trying to assemble it in more of a digital showroom.
And what's your day-to-day like as a CEO of the company? Are you, I know it's changed since COVID, I'm
Yeah,
sure quite a bit, but
it's so weird.
are you on in normal times, as I like to call them, are you out on the job sites a lot still, or are you back in an office environment, more managing the team somehow, or
Yeah. It is there, I don't know, normal times. Like
so
it's
long
been
ago?
almost a year, right, since we
Hmm.
had normal times. And I was technically an employee of the company for a while. So back, it's been maybe August of 2019, was when I think 2019 or 18 is whenever I became the official CEO.
Okay.
Um, and since then, a lot of it, like that initial part, if you can imagine working with your spouse for 14 years, and then now you're in charge of everything that they managed, right? You have
Mm.
to delicately figure out what's the right pathway and how do we fix what's been broken, in a way that keeps everybody engaged. And so that's not easy. But what my day looks like typically, we have a great new software program that I don't know if a lot of people know about, Monday.com. It's great. I love it. One of our newer hires, he's been with us a little over a year now, kind of built out Monday into a workflow. So unfortunately, in our life, every day's a Monday. So we start our day in Monday, and that just kind of has the high level tasks that we need. But on a grander scale, lunch and learns with architects and designers, still both in person and virtual. Definitely more virtual these days. I do attend a lot of HBA meetings, as many as I can, and local Chamber of Commerce meetings, networking meetings here internally, developing relationships locally. You mentioned I'm involved in CEDIA. I'm on the board, so I have board calls occasionally to have to take and what have you. Um, it's a lot of 2020 was breaking apart the company from a process perspective and trying to rebuild it, as you can imagine, in a way that really was effective. We're One Vision partners, and they piloted us in an EOS program,
Mm.
the Entrepreneurial Operating System.
Yeah.
It's been the lighthouse for stormy waters and has really helped a ton. So we have weekly meetings that keep everything going on the business side. And then after those weekly meetings, I'm managing other people issues or process issues to try to kind of keep the ball moving forward on that. After redoing our budget for this year, also I have to get out and beat the streets and sell. So after we hire a lead tech, then I'll be looking to hire a salesperson. But in the meantime, I've got to go back out there. So
Well, I want to continue talking about some of the changes there, your involvement with CEDIA, as well as other
yeah,
activities. But first, we need to take a short break.
sure, let's do that.
This is our moment to see more possibilities than ever before, to expand our thinking, our capabilities, and our vision, to leverage the unique strengths of two innovative companies, to create new opportunities for you, our valued customers and partners, to build confidence and loyalty with consumers, and become the #1 intelligent lighting and smart home company in the world. This is our moment to make an impact as significant as this. This is our moment to shine.
Welcome back. I'm talking to Jamie Briesemeister, CEO and co-founder of Integration Controls in St. Louis, Missouri. Jamie, you were telling me about the change to being CEO, and I really was curious what Jeff, how his role has changed, because you said you kind of took over what he had been doing. As I assume you mean that he was basically CEO now. I see he's listed as co-founder, but
Yeah,
what's his role now?
yeah, he's wearing many hats. Really, he's in charge of finance, so that's the biggest hat that he wears. We had some data issues last year, so his biggest rock was to get our backlog of billing and QuickBooks management and all of the financials tidied up. So his focus has been in finance, and also within the EOS platform where we're meeting. we have a delegate and elevate exercise. So
Mhm.
we have our annual planning on Friday. So we'll go through what this means, but right now he's really out in the field. He's doing a
Okay.
lot of, he's doing internal sales quotes that help myself and my salesperson make sure that we have like all the nuts and bolts, or as many as possible, before we sell a job. And then we have a process that we do called discovery. So he's active in those discoveries. Discoveries are kind of the precursor to selling a job, because it gives, for an existing home, it gives us a lot more insight. So again, we know the right pieces, parts, and labor are all accounted for. Acts as lead tech, but really finance is kind of the big company role that he wears. And that transition was interesting. There were many years as lead salesperson and outside perspective, maybe my approach was wrong, but saying we need to do this, we need to do this, we need, I'm seeing potential and we need to do it. And as someone who's very technical, it was challenging for him to stop doing the work,
Mm-hmm.
to focus on fixing the problems. And it became like this, a bit of a thing where we would, get into a rhythm or environment where you need to, and then maybe we'd have some discussions that got a little intense. And then, through going to a few of the CEDIA business exchanges and traveling with him in that business mindset, there was one the final one that CEDIA had. Jeff looked at me and said, because I had been asking for an ownership role, right? As lead, I'm married to the boss, I'm a co-founder, but technically I'm an employee, but I'm the face of the company. So people saw me as an owner.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm leading sales and being introduced as the owner, it didn't feel right. So I said, I just want a sliver of ownership so it feels right. And I got way more than a sliver. He took a sliver and he gave me the big piece of the pie. And he said, we've been doing this for a few years. You have a lot of great ideas. And I think you can really take this on and ultimately do a better job than I can. And I can do the technology because I can't, I installed an I can program, but that was 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't want to. So, so that transition was like him kind of realizing his strengths and my strengths, and then us kind of flip-flopping certain parts of our roles.
That's an amazing evolution, because you hear so many times folks that have found these companies that, like yours, they really want to just do the tech, and then they find themselves running this business, and they're usually not very good at that. And then they get stuck running the business, and then they learn that you're supposed to work on the business, not in the business. So they don't do the tech anymore at all, and they're miserable. And then they quit and they sell it, or they go work for a manufacturer. And all this sort of incestuous stuff begins in the industry. But the fact that you're able to sort of salvage roles, like without anybody losing their, the ego issues of maybe being the boss. And Jeff really wants to just be out there in the field doing the work. And
he wants to make people happy. I mean, that's it. He's out there. He wants to see the happiness. And in the role that he was in, he felt like he was making no one happy. And that's because the joy of a client experiencing a system and telling you thank you, and the light that goes off in their face, and that's enjoyable. That is what you take away and you go, this is why I do it, right? And then having them send you Christmas cards of their family like 10 years later, and that's why we do what we do. And he was getting bogged down with all of the business stuff, and I don't blame him. And quite frankly, when he told me now you get to eat the pie, I was like, I don't want the pie. Can we find someone else to have the pie? And no, I've been in it too long. I started it with him. It's my pie now. So.
Well, two things I wanted to mention. One is that I did finally get to know Jeff better. I've crossed paths with both of you in many events. I met you, I believe, at a CEDIA Awards cocktail reception after a celebration thing, where you and Patrick Hartman approached me about this CEDIA exchange, reviving CEDIA Management Conference and recruiting me. And I was like deer in the headlights. Like, what are you getting me into here? Because I was a guy that wrote about these events, but I never was participating in the planning of them. And
Yeah.
I'm not sure I did a very good job, but at least I got to work with you on some of those councils when we were trying to put together Exchange, and successfully did that for a couple of years.
Definitely.
Last year, though, I was at my last in-person event with you and Jeff, and that's where I got to know Jeff better, which is the ProSource Summit in Las Vegas, which is a scary thing to attend in person because we kind of knew what was happening in the world, but we weren't quite sure.
Yeah.
And when I got home, I just was so mad that I had been there. but one of the good memories was sitting and talking to Jeff in a bar, which I can't believe we actually could have done.
I know, it sounds so weird. We
Yeah.
were so scandalous, Jeremy.
yeah, no masks or anything.
Right.
So we were bumping elbows, which we thought was so progressive at the time.
Right.
Anyway, it was great to get to know Jeff. But I just wanted to talk to you about your, when we did this Exchange event, and that was just scratching, like the tip of the iceberg for you as far as your involvement with CEDIA. You were involved in a lot of things. Can you talk about what those extracurricular industry activities do for you? Like, what do you get out of it? Why do you do that so much? It's such a time commitment.
Yeah.
But other than just altruism, is there something that you really gain from that?
I know, I've been asked that. I like to make positive influence. Okay. So, and I'm passionate about progress, and I don't like to see people stagnate.
Yeah.
Especially, or things, so anything stagnate. So, that's really what fuels it. Now, why CEDIA? It's tied to our industry.
Yeah.
When I was a speech pathologist, ASHA was the CEDIA. It's the American Speech Language Hearing Association. In medical environments, your association is like your Bible. Like, that's where you go. That's everything that you do is based on the standards that they set. And so coming into this industry, that's like my natural inclination is I need to align with an association, and CEDIA seemed to be the right one at the time, and still is. And I hadn't really intended to volunteer outside of I had made a comment, I guess, to Mitchell Klein after finding that the CEDIA management conferences of the past had been canceled. Mm-hmm. And it was the last one they had was the first one I went to. And it was kind of the first business aha moments that we had as a company. And it came too late. It was in 2010 or something. I don't know. It came way too late. 6 years is too late to have your first business aha moment. But I complained enough to Mitch to say, hey, this sucks. I loved this event. I learned so much. It's built for people like us in this weird, growth phase. And he said, okay, well, if you complain enough, you should volunteer with CEDIA and resurrect it.
Yep.
So I tried and was pretty successful for a little while. I started volunteering as the professional development advisory committee in that committee. Mm-hmm. And that out of that committee came the business exchange, but it also oversees a lot of other working groups that CEDIA has within it, kind of as a filter to the board, which at the time it was a new committee, and it ultimately developed into this. So I didn't realize I was taking on a big chunk of volunteer work. But I really enjoyed working with you, working with Lisa McCord, and her with CEDIA, and that whole experience was just really fun. We got to create something that I thought was really valuable for the industry. I'm obviously on the board now, so
Yeah. What do you view?
Yeah.
You've been on the board for a year now.
Yeah.
What have you gained? What kind of insight do you get from those types of meetings?
Yeah, having been a volunteer for so long, and then now being on the board, like, there were struggles that you see as a volunteer when you're in working groups, and comments maybe that you hear from staff that you want to help fix. And so I feel that we're in a position now on the board to help CEDIA make really good decisions in the future. And we just had a board meeting today, and I feel like we move the needle on those good decisions. The challenging thing, I think, with any association or even my own business is that I want all the change to happen yesterday. Mm. And I have a hard time being patient with the process.
Yeah.
So what being involved in CEDIA on this level has meant, it's given me insight to why things take a while, insight to having patience with the process. Dave Weinstein has been a great mentor of mine. Anytime we have, any kind of discussions on the board that may or may not get heated, he reaches out and makes sure that we're all aligned. And, those relationships that you carry are more than just, it's, I had somebody go, well, you want to be on the board to build your resume. Like, who am I going to build it for?
Right.
For myself,
Yeah.
for my own feather and my own cap. I wanted to be on the board because I thought I could make change. And being able to make change is great, and positive change is even better. But the relationships that come out of it help support you as a person wholly too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just, I get opportunities like this on occasion because I'm a board member, but that's not why I signed up for this.
Right.
Yeah,
we have, friends in common who have served on the board, and I know they've found similar satisfaction from it, but also frustrations, because I think they probably are that same mindset of, I own a business and I can change things today if I want to. But when you're dealing with a board vote or a big association, things take time. There's a process that you have to go through. There's a plan that's in place, and you try to follow the plan. And I'm imagining that's part of where the headaches come in, or the frustrations come in with that sort of
understanding the processes of an association outside of what you do in business, but conversely, a lot of the strategy sessions that we've sat in have helped me reflect on my business and my strategy.
Sure.
And, being aware of, before a press release goes out, knowing some of the programs that CEDIA is in, it's just good to know. It helps. Maybe I have a little inside information to help me plan.
Yeah.
That's definitely something I can plan a little bit better, because I know that we knew Propel was going to launch, obviously, before it did.
Right.
So something like that is like, oh, that's interesting. And you can think about it maybe on your personal business side as well as how is this going to benefit the CEDIA and industry at large?
Yeah. And you're just clued in more to the overall industry because you're part of that organization, as opposed to, did I read the email that CEDIA sent me?
Totally.
No, I was too busy. Right.
And I completely, and I got to say, like, in strategy, we break down, what is CEDIA doing? What do they need to stop doing, do more? They do a lot of fantastic things, but it's getting missed in those emails.
Sure.
And so strategy wise, how do we let the membership know what we're doing, and get better social presence? That's where a lot of news is coming these days. Like, how do we get that out there so people know what's happening? Because there's a lot happening within CEDIA, and we just need to get, I think, a little better about celebrating it and sharing what's accomplished, what's been accomplished.
For sure.
Yeah.
This is the part of the interview where we talk about my favorite articles of yours.
Oh, okay.
And tie them to current events and things, so it's not just a laundry list. But one of the articles you wrote recently was about the now normal for your clients, and I wanted to ask you what sort of requests have changed in the past year because of COVID in terms of the technology that you're putting into homes. Every time I talk to an integrator, it's all about, well, the home office has become a priority. Obviously, the home, network for the kids doing school from home, whatever it is. Is that the case for your jobs as well? Are you seeing a lot of changes in the priorities that the clients place on certain things?
Networks, I think, we certainly had already known, we as an industry know that networks are really important, but the aha moment for clients definitely went on. So
yeah,
that's happening for sure. Two other interesting, but it totally makes sense, request, acoustic management, because of, like you said earlier, with your wife, right? And her AirPods.
Yes.
And like all of these different meetings and conversations being had in the house. It makes the house very noisy, and everyone wants to be kind of clocked in to their, so we're looking at acoustic management in a couple different projects. And it's challenging, right? Like, after the fact, and trying to make things work. And, this one room in a client space has 2 windows and a big barn door that they put in because they love the barn door, but they had other doors that were much more acoustically sound. So now they're kind of kicking themselves that they did this, but it looks beautiful. So it's like, well, what curtains can we add? And what about, drapes over here? And what about acoustic paneling on the ceiling? Because the master bedroom is right above, and she's waking up when he's going to work early and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And then he's getting upset when the lawn guy is outside during a really big meeting that he has. So that audible garbage stuff is happening now.
Right.
But it's audible, like just people stuff too, like
Sure.
the natural sounds of humans. And then touchless, like people are definitely picking up on voice more, and that I don't have to touch or interact with things, or if not touch, just automated in general. You walk in, it turns on, you walk out, it turns off, for lighting or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's things that have already kind of been around, but I think the awareness of the application, it's not just because it's a cool piece of tech, but now people are seeing how truly it can help them in their homes, and help them maybe touch things less and have easier meetings at home beyond a network connection.
In a little bit of a tangential way, you've mentioned wellness and biophilia, because that sound, that acoustics is part of that. It's a side piece of it, but the biophilia topic has been something you've written about. We've talked about it a lot in the magazine. Are you seeing that manifest into actual projects in any way besides the acoustic element?
I wish I could say yes, but not really.
It's a little early yet. Yeah.
I think it's early yet. And I think especially now, if people have a chance to be in any kind of nature, they want to be in actual nature and not a digital nature, right? So we haven't that I know of had any of these requests. But at the same time, I have a designer who's very much interested in wellness and has someone within her company being well certified. And when I say I have a relationship of mine, okay, design relationship. And wellness is a big factor of what they do. And she was talking about, she's like, wellness isn't really picking up. It's not. And I said, well, let's rethink about how you promote it. Similar to asking a client, do you want a smart home? The answer will most always be no. To say, would you like us to do wellness stuff in your home or have a wellness solution? I don't know what that is now.
Yeah. What is that?
Right. But if you say it as, we have systems that can make your air and your lights and the noises in your home just feel better. And if you are interested in that, we have what we call wellness solutions that can make that happen. But you've got to say what it is before you give it a name. And she was like, oh, that's right. That's really the approach, because I'm thinking of it as, do you want wellness? Yes or no? Okay, move on. And instead, it's more of the conversation of, how do you live and what's important to you? And are you sensitive to these things? And does the air quality in your home matter? And, I hear a fan in the background. Do those sounds tend to bother you? Or looking at this new design, the designer knows, the architect knows it's a big open space with hard surfaces. Physics will show you that there's acoustic problems in there right now without even building the space.
Yeah.
So,
well, are lighting, you touched on that as part of it. Are you in the business of fixture installation yet, or is that something you're even thinking about?
We are. So, because again, sensitivities, light, poorly dimmed LEDs, the hums, the flickers, all that stuff can make me mad. So we actually have a project. My mother-in-law had a really bad heart condition this summer, and we almost lost her. And thank God we did not. She's a very much amazing person in our life. And so she's living with us now. Oh. And in this, multi-generational household that we have now, we'll be doing an addition and giving her more of a private space. So in that project, I want to beta test a lot of the products that we see being marketed to us as integrators, and really vet, do we want to do this? Do we not want to do this? And if we do, what products are we going to use? So like I'm looking at DMF lighting, and we're becoming Ketra certified. So I would love to look at Ketra bulbs in my house, and working with David Warfel for like a good, linear lighting design and taking those wellness concepts into play. Color changing, I think, is just fantastic. Why would you not these days? You never have to install holiday lights again if you put color changing lights outside. You can celebrate every holiday all year round. So yeah, so we're not selling it as a solution yet. Kind of our philosophy is we don't want to, not that it's bleeding edge, you know, lighting isn't bleeding edge, but for an integrator to become that resource, I feel we need to know more. And I have a really good lighting resource in town, Wilson Lighting, that I work with. They're so good. And I don't always want to step on those toes. You know, they know that business better. There are certain elements of that business that they know to reach out to us with.
Yeah.
And certain like custom pieces and maybe product that they don't have access to or can't implement, then we would be involved. So really, I wanted to do this beta test project so we know more. Whether we decide to sell it or not, I'm not sure yet.
Yeah. There's a lot to get to know for sure. A lot of new things. One of the last topics I wanted to just address real quick, we've already kind of talked about it being a woman in the industry, in a male-dominated industry, and not only that, being a husband and wife ownership team. Those are two topics that you covered in articles. And then the husband and wife, you actually talked to other husband and wife teams and discussed what their strategies were for working in the same environment. And you've obviously covered what your evolution as business owners have been. Do you kind of have a, I hate to say sorority with the other female, members of the industry, but do you keep in touch with other women in the industry and kind of share best practices or anything like that, or have you gotten to the point where it's not even an issue anymore because you just are doing it?
I would love to say it's not an issue anymore, but I think it still is really. And last year's ISE was an example of that, with a robot and how it was programmed to dance, right? And just being a woman and being in that field, you don't want to be working and in work mode and be unnecessarily sexualized. Like those two things don't need to be in the same room. So do I have a girl gang? I do have a girl gang, and I love them. And it's integrators and it's marketers and it's women in the industry, because one of the things that's vastly different about this industry compared to before, primarily female dominated, right? Speech pathology, and now I'm in male dominated. So in a primarily female dominated industry, it's way more catty, way more bitchy, I'll say. You can edit that out if you need to, but at least that was my experience. In this field, I feel like women are drawn to each other because we're all looking for the other purple unicorn that can make us feel like we're not the only purple unicorn in the room. It's nice to have, and at the same time, I also want to recognize those husbands of, or the supporting spouse of those women, because a lot of women in this industry work with their husbands, and some of those husbands can be very supportive, and some of them need some help in that department, quite honestly. So when we do have a chance to girl gang, it's kind of us supporting each other on an emotional level with being a woman in the world, but also working with my spouse and how challenging can it be, or we found a way to work it out. It doesn't always happen that way with spousal relationships. I came out of the office to become the face of the company and guide and run things. And you mentioned ego before. Like, I think for a lot of people, if they were the founder, they have a hard time maybe recognizing if someone else in their organization, spouse, family member, whoever, could do a better job. Like that's some personal work that they could do to make their relationship and their work probably better.
Well, that's a good note to end on, Jamie. Thank you so much, Jamie Briesemeister, for taking the time today to chat, and I hope you have a great 2021.
Thank you. It's gearing up to be that way, and I think if we just follow our plan, we'll be set.
Also, thanks to everybody for joining us. Be sure to comment, share, or subscribe to the podcast, and you can check out all the latest news at residtechtoday.com. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential tech, lighting specialist, residential tech.